This is a bunch of pictures of my 31 from all the way back in the day when I bought it back in 1991 till some shots all the way up to present day. Here's a couple more shots of it sitting in the barn with my 22 Velocity and also with the 20 or the 17-foot Checkmate. Those are the other two boats that I had back at that particular time. Okay, I put these pictures together about 6 months ago and really kind of got stopped in my tracks. Couldn't put the animation together because of this picture right here. That happens to be one of my best friends in the whole world, Chris Major, leaning over one of his hot rods. That's in Mahwah, New Jersey at his shop, Auto Lab. Unfortunately, Chris isn't with us anymore. He lost his fight with cancer about 3 years ago. But he was one of the coolest and most innovative people you ever want to meet. Just a great guy to hang out with. And my boat is in the background there. That's the way it used to be in the early 90s with two V8 Evenrudes on it. And we had it at his shop because we were doing some aluminum construction work on the transom, or aluminum structural work on the transom, and also putting a surge tank in the fuel system. There's a picture of the surge tank, but that's not right after we finished it. That's after a lot of years of use. Some of these pictures were taken down the road a ways, so it looked clean when we put it in, but that's kind of what it looks like anyway. Okay, this picture here I know is taken around 2001 because all that dust is from grinding on the transom when we did a bunch of work to strengthen the transom even more because I was re-rigging it with three 300Xs. Some of the pictures afterwards you'll see there'll be 3 throttles but only 2 shifts because my shift for the center engine is down under the dashboard. But that's definitely before the rigging was done. This is a picture from about that same time after we had taken the 2 V8s off and that old engine bracket off, and we just kind of had everything cleared out of the way, and we're pretty much getting the boat ready for the glass project that we did, the structural work that we did in the back, and then the rigging with the new motors. Okay, in these next few pictures you can see that at one point I just had an aluminum, 4-inch aluminum angle up across the top bolts of my bracket, and then I had aluminum bolted into my stringers, and I basically had aluminum knee braces that tied up into that angle aluminum. That's all going to go back in, but what you're looking at here is you see the aluminum is back in, but what we had done is we built a bridge going across the top out of 3 layers of 1/2-inch marine ply, and each one of those, I'm sorry, that's 3/4-inch marine ply, and each one of those layers had 2 inches of 1708 biax. This is all done with West System epoxy. Rather than have that bridge end against the side of the boats, we basically put, in essence, knee braces on the outside of the boat so that bridge would come to an end on those and spread the load so as not to really shear at the side of the boat. So after we got done with all that, then that aluminum actually bolts into the bridge, and then the aluminum knees go back in, and all that stuff ties together. And there'll be pictures of that as you see a little bit farther on as we get into the motor pictures and you start seeing the rigging go together. You'll see all of this stuff bolted together and how structurally it just kind of made the back of that boat just unbelievably solid. There's no way anything could ever move after we put this together like this. When I ended up taking this boat down to Lake X for some engine problems that I had with the 300Xs, and they were very impressed with the rigging in the back of this and with my fuel system, which they asked me if I minded if they used some of my ideas on their race boats going forward. So we were pretty proud of everything that we did after, having the people at Lake X impressed with our work. Okay, in the next series of pictures here, you start to see this all come together. The angle aluminum is tied into the aluminum plates that bolt in through the stringers. That the angled knees bolt up into the 4-inch angle aluminum, which also ties into the bridge. Also, the top of those top bolts on the angle aluminum go into all the same top bolts that are on the engine bracket, so everything is all locked together. Also in this rigging, you'll see here I still have primer balls that come out of the surge tank and go up to the engine. This is very early on, and it's something that we eliminated as I had some fuel problems with these engines. So we got rid of the primer balls and started pressurizing the surge tanks by turning off the return lines to the main tank, and that let us build 7 pounds of pressure to basically take the place of the surge pumps to prime the motors. After they're primed, you open the valves back up, and it returns back to the tank. And that was the ingenious part that Lake X wanted to copy. Here's another picture of the fuel delivery system. Now, in this particular picture, it actually has a third fuel pickup for the surge tank, and you also see that I have a fuel sending unit for a gas gauge on that surge tank. A couple other things we did to fuel delivery was I ended up putting a third fuel pickup in the main tank, and I ended up putting a fuel gauge on my surge tank, so I'd make sure that I always had plenty of fuel no matter what for the motors to feed off of. These next couple of pictures just show how the angle aluminum or the aluminum knees tied into the stringer system and then went on up and buttoned up into that bridge. They tied into the 4-inch angle aluminum and then into the bottom side of that bridge. You can see that's bolted up into that bridge. And also we got 4-inch angle aluminum that comes off of the knee and bolts into two of these stanchions that go back into the engine bracket. On that engine bracket, you can see where that box area where it goes wider up around the trim tabs. That's an area where that other angle aluminum tied into the knees inside. So just all of that stuff is tied together like a brick shit house. Here's a picture of the engines. The engines in some pictures they're level, and some pictures the outside motors are up. That was because a number of things we were playing with rigging and trying to get engine heights right. Also, you'll notice on one of these pictures that there's a water pickup for the center engine, because that ended up proportionately being higher than the other two motors in proportion to the bottom of the boat. So it took a little bit of rigging to get everything just right, but a bunch of pictures of it along the way. Real amazing job the way Stainless Marine made that bracket. Those 380K planes just suck right up into those pockets. They're just about touch. I gave them a bunch of measurements and they just built the bracket absolutely perfect. There's the 3 throttles and 2 shifts that I spoke about earlier, but I don't have my 5 switches yet for the trim and the tabs. 2 on the right are tabs, 2 on the left are trim, and I eventually got a third one in between all that, so I had 3 trims and 2 tabs. There's all the switches in there now. There's what a detonated engine looks like. This was all from a lean fuel condition, from lean programming. This was something that was possible to happen on triple engine V-bottoms. But Mercury figured it out. They reprogrammed my computers, and they've been very dependable ever since. No complaints. Love these 300Xs, but this was a problem. I went through a number of engines in the beginning when I first put this thing together, and thank God for a guy by the name of Pete Cohen from Mercury Racing, who he took this project under his wing, figured out what it was, and made it right. Okay, after seeing the center motor opened up and noticing the high stampings on the pistons and in the heads, even though these were under warranty, I wanted to take all these stampings down, because high points are points where you can get phosphorus. So Pete Cohen was pretty cool. Even though everything was under warranty, he let me open up the other engines, and I cleaned all of those high points. In other words, the up marks on the pistons and the marks that mark starboard and port, and then the numbers inside the heads. All of those I cleaned off so everything was smooth, and it just was like an extra safeguard against this detonation problem. But the whole problem really turned out to be all computer related. Once they changed the fuel mapping on this, because these motors were dependable at high speed, but anytime you ran the boat slow, at slow speeds, they were actually getting ahead of themselves in the fuel curve. It's a condition called run ahead. And this boat, V-bottoms are very efficient at low speeds, less efficient at high speeds. So at low speeds, with just a little bit of a crack of the throttle, this boat would run along at 40, 45, 50 miles an hour. It would actually get ahead of the fuel curve, and it would create a lot of combustion chamber temperature at low speeds, and then just burn up. So they figured it out by putting a set of test heads on it with knock sensors, and solved the problem. This was a day up in Lake Wallenpaupack in Pennsylvania. Me and a bunch of my friends were up there. I had my 31. My buddy Anthony Monet was in that 24 Pantera that you're looking out over the bow of there. He now has a 34 raised deck Sutphen with a pair of Ritchie Zool engines in it, which is a beautiful boat. He redid it as a sit-down. And Trevor Wood has, in a second, this 25 Sonic, you'll see. He had that Sonic up there that day. He doesn't have that anymore. He now has a 26 Rum Runner that he's setting up with a pair of 300Xs. And another one of the guys that's there is Morgan Hawk. He was riding with me a little bit that day, riding with Trevor a little bit that day. He shot video of the day. Morgan now has the old Harris Casino race boat. That's a 34 raised deck staggered boat with Innovation engines in it. Well, actually, now he just did a set of Ritchie Zool engines for it. But so anyway, we were up there ripping around, and it was a late fall day, and nobody on the lake but the three of us. We pretty much owned the lake that day. It was pretty much a blast. Okay, this is a little bit more of my innovation. Before, Lakeland Marine had a fix for the Sportmaster gear cases. When you run them real high and they would get hot, they would always, even though they would pressure test and vacuum test correctly, they would build up enough temperature that they would create enough pressure to blow oil out, and then when you came off plane and they dropped back in the water, they would cool down and create enough vacuum to draw water past the seals. And when you pull the case off and pressure test it or vacuum test it, it always tested good, but it still had the problem. It needed to have a vent set up, and nobody had made one yet. So this was my vent set up that I made back in 2001, because you got to realize these motors, these 3 motors that I have, were within the first 100 300Xs that were ever built. So some of the problems I was running into, other people hadn't had yet. But this is the way I fixed it. I ran a vent setup out of the top hole, and I ran a hose up under the cowl, and I put a regular Bravo drive bottle underneath the hood, and I would just put a little bit of oil in that. Well, I really didn't even need any oil in it. All it really needed was a place for the oil to go and come back down. But I would always put a little bit of oil in there just so I had an indicator if anything was getting milky, if water was getting in. But that was a 2001 innovation of mine before Lakeland Marine had their kit available on the market. A couple of shots from going out on the Hudson River. These are a set of Johnny Masco offshore lab. These were 15 by 28. Boat ran like mid 90s with these on on a good day, light load of fuel. That's like the best speed I would get, be about 95 and change. Okay, you always got to get a couple bonus shots in here. This is up at the Connecticut River Run. I can't remember exactly what year, but it was a number of years back. Anyway, this 21 Sutphen that you see right here is the very first 21 that Richie Sutphen Jr. made when he stretched the 20 to a 21 and raised the deck on it a little bit. Beautiful boat, and that's the current owner of it. He was actually taking that boat out on the Connecticut River Run that day. Okay, here's me and Wixer, Breakfast of Champions, Budweiser, first thing in the morning on the bow of the TKO boat. That was in the morning, just before we were going to head over to Claudio's, doing a Claudio's run from Old Saybrook over to across the Long Island Sound over to Greenport. Ken and Dan, as usual, are kind of running the pack. You can see some Sutphens over there in the distance. So we had a bunch of Sutphens and a bunch of other boats still. Another fun day out on Long Island. Some more shots in the garage. I probably should have got some videos of the boat running, but there are some videos of this boat running on YouTube. If you type in 31 running or Jimmy's Sutphen and T. Monet's Pantera, and there's another one, Jimmy's Sutphen at the Connecticut River Run. So there are some good shots of the boat running, but these are just a few more garage shots. Okay, I'm not a card player, but is 5 of all different kinds a full house? I don't know, looks like a full house to me. Here we go again, another morning, Breakfast of Champions, about to do another Claudio's run, only this time it was a pretty cold day, windy day, pretty rough out, and we made it with my 31, and Ken and Dan, they used to own, this was before Dan was running Outer Limits, and they had to only have an Outer Limits. Their boat in the back there was Ken and Dan's 34 raised deck Sutphen. That was the old Tsunami race boat. So on that particular day, we did the same thing. Left Old Saybrook, ran across the Sound over to Greenport, had lunch over Claudio's, did a rip around on the inside in Long Island, and then came back. As you'll see in some of these pictures coming up soon, we definitely went through that snot that day, but worked the 31 pretty hard. We stayed ahead of Tsunami the whole day. it was definitely a fun day. How's my crew look? A little shaken up? Back at the ramp, going through things, cleaning everything up a little bit, getting ready to head home. Couple shots running on the Hudson River. There's my all-time best speed I got out of the boat. That's with a pair of Hydromotive QB4 27 Race Lab props. That was a one-time best run. Project back in 2016. Sent my Rams out to Latham Marine, had them rebuilt, flushed out my helm. The boat was originally rigged with -6 hose from front to back. I put together all new hoses, went -6 from the cylinders into the T's, and then -8 forward to the helm, which made the steering better than it ever was when it was brand new. The steering was starting to get a little rough. It was time to freshen things up. So there's the motor part before the power head went back on. And then the very last picture that's coming up is a picture of more recent. That's with all three power heads freshened up. All three brackets have been rebushed. I mean, all three mids have been rebushed, swivel brackets, and all three mids have been repainted. So that's the last picture I got of most recent times. Hope you like the video.